When we were little, we used to go to my grandmother's house and with all my little cousins and my brothers and sisters. Well, my sisters, my brothers were a little too young for this game. We used to play Duck, Duck, Goose, and there was the perfect room for it. It was this blue room that was kind of circular, and it was cool because you just sit in there, and we're on this blue carpet, and you sit in a circle, and, you know, my Aunt Becky or my Uncle Greg or my sister Dory or whatever would be the one that's in charge. And you know the game. You just tap the head. You go duck, 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 and then goose. And then you try to fly around. You run around the circle that you got to get back to the spot that you hit the goose on, you know? And it was a fun game. But the thing that's interesting about the game is that if you don't play right, it gets pretty stupid. Like if somebody tripped you as you were running around, when you say goose and then you have to run around, somebody just put out their hand and made you fall, you'd get caught and you wouldn't get to your spot. Or if you started making up other things to say on people's heads, it wouldn't make any sense. You would lose the sense of the game. The same thing would be true, like, for example, if you played chess, where, like, all of a sudden the different chess pieces did whatever each person wanted them to do. There's this new phenomenon on TV. It's called Queen's Gambit. And it's interesting because in Queen's Gambit, one of the things that you start to recognize is that the very identity of the girl, who's the main, protagonist, is constantly in question of herself because she's an orphan. She's been abandoned basically twice by her parents, and she becomes this amazing chess player. But the piece that seems to cause her the biggest problem is the one that can do the most, the queen. Now, if during the game all of a sudden they said, okay, the knights can jump 5 steps up to the left, and then the bishops can do whatever they want, and the queen can do what they want, you'd have total chaos. And you couldn't play the game. That's what we're in today. We're in a world where no longer are we allowing God to place that proper loving direction, or I would use a word that makes everybody feel uncomfortable, limit around us. Who is Jesus Christ? I mean, Christ at his essence is a God that decided to be limited. I mean, is there anything more limiting than a little baby boy? A little baby. I mean, what more limitations could you possibly have? Even fish, when they're born, they can swim at least. A little baby can't even do that. We have a God who demonstrates to humanity that actually embracing our limits is the key to unlocking the great game of life of love that Jesus Christ invites us to do. And without that, we live in chaos. It'd be like playing a hockey game, and all of a sudden the goalie, instead of trying to defend the goal, could just move the goals and skate around. You would just have chaos. And that's what we feel today. The moorings, the very structure of our humanity, which Jesus Christ came to reset, to put the proper limits around, are now being flipped around and upside down. And that's why it's such a good question, right, that we hear here. It's so beautiful. The Levites asked John the Baptist, "Who are you?" That is so important for us to understand and to pray through. Like, who are we? Not what do you do? Not even like where are you from? Not even really like your name. All those things are important. They contribute. But like, who are you? And John the Baptist, of all the people that could have answered this question, he had that miracle birth. He had a dad who was a bigwig in the Jerusalem temple. He had all these things going on for him. He was the leader at the time. He was definitely the one that was, drawing the crowds. He could have easily said, I am the Christ. It's all about me. Now, most of us wouldn't ever think that, oh, no, I'm God. But boy, we live in a world where the tendency is to move God at best into a drawer that when we want them, we pull them out, like most politicians do, like a lot of leaders do, to just use God so as to be able to build up their own support. But yet, when you look at John the Baptist, what does he say? He says, I'm not even worthy to untie his sandals. In other words, he gets it. His limitedness is almost like I'm a slave of God. And he embraces that because he loves that. Because he knows when you trust God, there can't be anything more important. There can't be anything more urgent. There can't be anything more fulfilling than just receiving his divine love. And that's it. But we rebel against that by our nature because we hate to know that there's limits. We feel like if there's limits, then I'm being suffocated. If there's limits, then I can't be creative. If there's limits, then most importantly, I can't be free. But what frees us is to truly accept that there's nothing greater in our life than to be loved by Jesus Christ. In the chaos of our world around us is this rebellion against the loving limits that God places in our lives so that we can be protected, that we can grow in holiness, and most importantly, that we can get to heaven. Because remember what Jesus says, it's that camel trying to get through the eye of the needle. That is a very limited space. That is not a wide angle to get to heaven. And if that's the goal of life, then just as Jesus Christ embraced the very limits of humanity, he reveals to us how to be human beings. He reveals that our identity is not based on sexual pleasures. Our identity is not based on some psychological finding of myself. The identity is found in the divine love of God, who at the moment of our conception endowed us with all the dignity, but also all the limitedness of our lives. So today, let's allow that question to be kind of pondered in our heart. Who are we? And hopefully find the source of that response, as John the Baptist did, in seeing our relationship with Jesus Christ, who is God. And because he's God, we get to embrace that fact that we can be limited in his love, to be called to be unlimited in the loving place of heaven.